Okay, let's do this. Huh? Hi, I'm Maris Kreisman, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you tonight to another excellent virtual event at McNally Jackson. If you go to mcnallyjackson.com and look at our events calendar, you'll see all the amazing writers and programs we're hosting in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye on the site or subscribe to our newsletter to hear more about what's coming soon. We're glad that even though we can't all be in the same room at the moment, we're still able to host events during this difficult time. As we've weathered the pandemic and reopened all 4 of our locations for browsing and shopping, indie bookstores like ours still need more support. And so if you enjoy free events like this one and want us to keep hosting more of them, please buy books from us. Throughout the event, I'll post links in the chat to buy books by some of the Epiphany readers tonight from McNally Jackson. And it really is a special-ish time during the pandemic to be able to convene with so many different writers from so many different parts of the country and the world. So trying to remember how amazing all of this is while we're seemingly in the home stretch. And I'm so pleased to welcome you tonight to another wonderful Epiphany event. And I'm pleased to introduce Rachel Lyon, the editor-in-chief of Epiphany and author of the novel Self-Portrait with Boy. Welcome, Rachel. Thrilled to have you.
Thanks, Maris. And hello to everyone. It's so nice to see a full Zoom room today for our launch, our sort of belated launch for our fall winter 2020 issue, which I have right here. As you can see, it's quite a beautiful issue, and there are a lot of contributors, and we wish we could have featured everyone who contributed to this incredible issue, but we think we have a really wonderful lineup tonight. So I hope you'll join us and celebrate with us. It's going to be a really great lineup. This issue actually features our Breakout 8 winners of the year. So we have 2 Breakout 8 readers tonight. That's Nayereh Doosti and Yana Cassell, not Cassell, right? And in addition to Nayereh and Yana, our other Breakout 8 winners this year were Darius Atifat Peckham, Macaulay Glynn, Mai Tran, Hatcher Gray, Georgia Klepfel, and Ash Durans. I just want to say a couple of words about the Breakout 8 contest. So it's in its 3rd year this year. This was the previous Breakout 8 issue with that beautiful cover. So it's in its 3rd year, and it honors student writers exclusively with a stipend, a year of mentorship, publication in Epiphany, and a few other little treats, I guess, treats and prizes. And we're really excited about it. It's now in its 3rd year, and we're hoping to continue doing it every year in the fall winter issues of Epiphany from here on in. It has been a sort of a difficult year for all of us, but I'm happy to report that Epiphany has done really well. In 2020, we've really exceeded all of our goals. We've published 70 writers in print last year and 120 writers online. So those are record-breaking numbers for us. We've also exceeded our subscriptions by leaps and bounds. And we're currently open for submissions. So all of these, I'm going to ask, well, maybe I'll put these links in the chat when I'm not speaking so I don't screw it up, but I'll put a link to subscribe and a link to submit. We're actually open for submissions for our spring summer 21 issue, which is going to be the Empire issue. It's a theme issue. Guest edited by Samir Pandya, who I see is here tonight. So we're really excited. Hi, Samir. We're really excited about that one. It's going to be really terrific. The theme of Empire is very rich and exciting. So can't wait to see what that, oh, thanks, Miracle. So can't wait to see what that brings. Anyway, without further ado, I will turn it over to Allison, who's going to introduce our readers tonight. Allison's our development director and a Breakout 8 winner herself. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you. So yes, I am a former Breakout 8 winner, which makes my work here with Epiphany like very special. And I just love hosting or co-hosting these issues and getting to celebrate with everybody. So our first reader is Marco Yan. Marco Yan is a Hong Kong-based poet whose work appears in Scores, Cordite Poetry Review, and Third Coast, among other places. He received his MFAs from NYU and HKU. Please welcome Marco.
Hi, everybody. So I'm zooming in from Hong Kong. So I think one good thing of this like COVID situation is how we have mastered the art of Zoom and how like everybody can zooming in from different places. So I'm going to read the poems from Epiphany. I just got this like 2 weeks ago in hard copy, so it finally arrived. So okay, here we go. Another moon. Before leaving Hong Kong, I was told there was only one moon orbiting Earth, that it appears the same wherever I decide to squander a year, but the luminous sphere above Brooklyn is deviant, vast, not the vision of the Mid-Autumn Festival of my childhood. On the roof, my housemates and I share a mooncake, some longan, some jasmine tea, unspoiling tales about the celestial. Nearing 30, we're still children who see only metaphors. We're pilgrims who follow the glow. Our minds, the candles burning in a tin box, all wax and flames, and the moon. Oh, the moon is a hare, now a priestess fleeing in haste, now a broken mirror becoming whole, the reflection of an old man driving home in his blue Mustang along the river bank, the radio static, one headlight broken. Bruised jasmines. How not to blame them. Before casting the pink mess to the kitchen rot which now flowers, I pull out the softened stems, the slime, other impurities. I have numbered the days of withering disguised as fluorescence. Those nights I leaned in, inhaled, if only innocence was a scent. I remember settling the fresh bouquet in tepid water, tossing a nickel into the makeshift vase, a coppery wish for microbes not to grow. Good things should stay on the verge of festering. Half naked by the sink, I sweated through the afternoon pruning the parts we didn't need to be beautiful. When I brought them home from the florists, they had so many leaves, green havoc, green lineography from the plastic wrap they courted. It was Sunday, a casual walk after lust, after all the crumbs had been picked, the way back no longer visible. And I wanted to see some signifiers of life on display. The street, unevenly paved, flanked with plants, a series of thresholds. I crossed each of them thinking I was unchanged. In the transections of cash and cut flowers, the fenders hollered, and I chose those quiet flames to burn in my room. Allure, yes, ambivalence too, then gradually, grace for days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you. So our next reader is Nayereh Doosti. Nayereh is a writer and translator from Shiraz, Iran. She graduated from Amherst College and is currently an MFA candidate at Boston University. Please welcome Nayereh.
Hi. So I'm going to read the first couple of pages from my short story. It's called When I Was 13. The day we realized Farnaz had run away, I was so scared I felt the blood rushing towards my groin, so I had to hide in the bathroom and masturbate. It was a cool February morning. Tarlan, whom at the time I fancied my future wife, brought us the news. It was the day Farnaz was to be discharged, and we were supposed to pick her up from the hospital with Tarlan's dad. I had given Grandpa his medicine and was ready to leave, hiding Farnaz's purple lipstick in my pocket to give to her. I kissed Grandpa on the cheek and he told me to help him with the sugar cubes. I knelt next to him and crushed the sugar loaf with the head of his iron nippers, while he gathered the crumbs on his cloth and cut the larger chunks into uneven cubes. Uncle Mustafa was snorting heroin in the yard. When Tarlan knocked, he opened the metal door and I watched them through the window. The cracked tiling in the yard was wet from rain, and frozen daffodil buds were rising out of the openings. Her sock toes fidgeting with flowers, she stretched her neck above Mustafa's shoulder and asked for me. Ardalan isn't home? Her loose white chador was wrapped around her thin waist, a fashion statement. Look at me, I've grown up. Her teeth were chattering the way they had when we were 5, and the snot on her face was frozen, and her dad slapped her for playing in the snow with me and Farnaz and getting her clothes wet. When we were 8 and played hide and seek with Farnaz, Tarlan would pull my hand and take me behind the thick trunk of the quince tree. If you don't squeeze together really hard, your sister will see us, she would say. And sometimes she would suck on my finger until I told her to stop, 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 and Farnaz would hear me and surprise us from behind. Just tell me what you want, Uncle Mustafa said. Tarlan said she was delivering a message from her dad. Farnaz ran away, simple and brief, just like that. Mustafa cursed her and punched the door. Grandpa bent his knees and leaned against the peeling wallpaper, his hunchback crumbling. What did she say? He asked me. His voice was gruff and hollow, a friendly reminder of his 4-decade addiction to tobacco. Is Farnaz okay? He patted the spot on the red rug beside him. Grandpa's hands were so large they could wrap around my whole head, his nails gray, blood forever frozen under his thick skin. Back in the yard, Mustafa slammed the door, leaving behind empty air and 2 pairs of boxers swaying gently on the clothesline. It was a cold but sunny day, perfect for dipping my toes in water. Come sit next to Grandpa. He clasped his hands in front of his dark lips and began muttering a prayer in Arabic. I didn't know where my sister had gone to. I didn't know what to do. I knocked over Grandpa's empty plastic chair, ran to the bathroom, and stayed there for what felt like a few long hours. Maman wasn't home. She was at work in the vegetable oil factory in the city she had to take 4 different buses to get to. Baba wasn't home either. Baba barely existed. He'd disappeared long ago, and Grandpa said the cops must have caught that rascal. I knew he was around, though. I'd seen Mustafa hand small white bags to Baba's buddies down the alley, but I couldn't say anything. Once Mustafa had found me doing what we both knew was a sin, and now the 2 of us shared an unspoken agreement. You shut up, I shut up. Grandpa had a picture in his album of baby me with Mustafa. This was before he became so slim, before his skin started to yellow. In the picture, he is no older than 10, and his flushed cheeks make him look like a completely different person. I am tightly swaddled, but I look content in Mustafa's arms. On the cement wall behind us, the shadow of Maman holds a camera with one hand and waves the other in the air to make me smile. The sunlight is so harsh that the details of my small face fade into it, leaving only the trace of a toothless smile. Grapevines veil the full body of the blooming quince tree and reach the wall. Mustafa is smiling at me, pressing my butt against his stomach and interlocking his fingers across my chest. I'm craning around and gazing up at him as though he's the best little uncle in the world. I don't exactly remember when he stopped smiling at me, but whenever I was scared of him later on, I would try to recall that photo. I would think of how in middle school he and Farnaz made me castles with toy blocks. In those days, he had fat cheeks and smiled a lot. But this was how he looked before ninth grade, before he quit school to help Baba sell fruit out of a pickup truck, when a competing seller beat him up and he came back home to find Grandpa yelling for help because he had slipped and fallen in the shower. I would try to remember, just like Grandpa had once said, that Mustafa was just a scared little boy in a rage. Even as a kid, he didn't get along well with Farnaz. Grandpa says they used to fight and wrestle over small things like who gets the bigger apple or who sits next to Grandpa, and Farnaz would always win. She liked to wash her feet in the hose and showed me how to fool the goldfish into kissing our toes. You have to sit on the edge of the pool, roll up your pants, and stay still until they think the flaky dead skin is fish food. They would easily circle around her feet like pilgrims in Tawaf. They never did that to me. Her feet were bruised and her skin would peel because of the small heels she liked to wear. It seemed as though the goldfish could smell her pain, as though they came to eat it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nayereh. So our next reader is Yana Cassell, and as Rachel mentioned earlier, both Nayereh and Yana are two of our Breakout 8 winners for our newest issue. And also, as Rachel said, I am a former Breakout 8 winner. So I was one of the winners of the inaugural issue, which seems like forever ago. And the Breakout 8 just meant so much to me. And I'm just so thrilled for our latest Breakout 8 winners, because I know that for me, it was truly a pivotal moment as a writer. It was the first prize I ever won. And it was so exciting. And to have, you know, work being published and the mentorship, I mean, I was in a place in my MFA where I wasn't feeling, I was really questioning, like, you know, is this worth it? Does anybody want to read what I'm writing? Does it matter? And then I got the call from Epiphany saying that I had won. And I remember crying in the MFA, being like, oh, this is a big deal. I'm here. And I had submitted for the Breakout 8 an excerpt of the memoir I was working on called Being Lolita. And less than a month after I won, I sold the book and it got published last August. And obviously I'm not saying that like one necessarily, I'm not saying that you win the Breakout 8, now you're going to get book, you know, now you're going to sell your book in a month. I don't mean to say that, but the winning the Breakout 8 really just gave me so much confidence and really gave me that, like, you know, like moment in the writing world to feel like, okay, yes, you're here, you're doing the right thing. What you're doing matters. And, you know, we give everybody in the Breakout 8 a stipend. I am so proud of this, of being part of Epiphany and being part of this fellowship. I think it's so important. And, you know, if anyone's able to donate even $5, it makes a huge difference for us in funding the Breakout 8 and making sure that we can support our writers, our emerging writers, not just with mentorship and with publishing, but also financially. I mean, we all know how hard it is. So even $5 makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate everything and your support by being here, and your support by submitting and subscribing and sharing the word and all these wonderful things. So anyway, I'm sorry, that's just my like moment of being nostalgic and happy. So our next reader is Yanna Cassell. Yanna is a writer from Philadelphia. She has studied creative writing at the Kenyon Young Writers program and Interlochen Arts Academy, where she served as an editor for the Interlochen Review. Her work has been featured in Atlas Magazine. She is currently studying creative writing at Mount Holyoke College. In her free time, she enjoys watching video essays on dead memes. Please welcome Yanna.
I'm going to read 3 poems. The first one is Miss Cleo as Escapism. I miss Cleo early in the morning when I turn water into coffee. I miss Cleo when I feel the stoplight change before I see it. I miss Cleo when I tell my baby daddy being a baby mama is not in the cards today. I miss Cleo when I color match my foundation with my own eyes. I miss Cleo at the foot of his bed, pried open, cocoa butter brown. I miss Cleo when I explain to him. In Trinidad, they say, hello, good night, when they answer the phone. And no, I am not from Trinidad, me with my mouth full of cotton and borrowed accent. I feel most like myself when I leave the phone to ring off the hook. Before I flip the cards, I hold my breath. I promise I'm always more surprised than you. Miss Cleo helps those who ask. When I shuffle the cards alone, I read them against television light. It helps to rely less on eyes and more on spirit. Eyes lie when asked. The truth lies between telephone rings. I let it ring day and night so anyone who has questions knows the answer. When he calls, I lay the receiver against the television and let the other women say what I can't. It's no different than if I had said it myself. There are no outgoing calls. I am always the receiver. On the corner of Once Was Plantation in our school is a man who is not allowed to stand here, and he knows this, and still he offers anyone with empty hands baby-sized Bibles. Such is the persistence of faith under pressure. We all say yes. I leave with 6 on the bus. Bella, who does not believe in God nor men, pulls out fistfuls of scripture to toss in the black tar. I saved the rest of them and told no one that I threw one too. None of us questioned our mascot or raider. Theft is generational and quiet. The driver with her silvery hair liked to call me Shug and tell me I was smart. I never spoke. I was bigger than the big kids who cursed and sat in the back. Sometimes the N-word woke me from my sleep. Sometimes Bella's sister would ride. She was older girl sweet. I envied her. She thought Bella was too sharp, and sometimes I agreed. And when Jacob grabbed her ass in front of everyone, no one moved. I'm not sure where I was. We never said sorry. And a lot of kids said dead bodies were buried out in the soccer fields. I wanted to believe it. Bella never did. But I let her hit me when she was mad, and after a while, all I could do was flinch when the boys made fun of me for brushing her hair. I counted burials littered on the roadside for years, next to churches. Long after she was gone, I pulled stones out of the ground for months to undo the curse that no one spoke. Boys love arguing and calling it philosophy. After Catherine Cohen. I keep thinking about how the first lens I ever understood politics through was the first person who ever made me feel stupid, boy of my dreams, something like a manlet out of hell. I never existed until he decided I had earned it. Silly, for someone so invested in the common good to be so insensitive, but really, it was never about me agreeing, but about him being right. I keep thinking about how I tried to explain feminism and why being myself is not just identity politics, but my life I'm living. Every day, this body is a filibuster on Blackness in a thunderstorm. I keep thinking about how when I explained systemic racism and he gifted me a very specific example of a very small subsection of Africa that hates white people or eats white people or something equally ridiculous I couldn't verify. And I wish I had asked him, do you live in Africa? With the barbarians who hunger for white meat, the ones who run from village to village searching for you, the lone orchard in the savannah, waiting to be plucked. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yana. That was so beautiful. Next up, we have Zak Salih. Oh, sorry, I need to pull back up the bios. Zak Salih lives in Washington, D.C. His writing has appeared in Crazy Horse, Fog Lifter, The Chattahoochee Review, I double checked everyone's names, but I did not double check the bios. I'm sorry if anyone.
Chattahoochee, it's totally cool.
Chattahoochee, okay. I'm sorry if anyone here is connected to Chattahoochee Review. I did not mean to offend you. The Chattahoochee Review, The Millions, The Rumpus, and other publications. His debut novel, Let's Get Back to the Party, is forthcoming in February 2021, so it just came out from Algonquin Books. Congratulations on your publication.
Thank you, thanks. Oh, is that my cue to go? Okay, cool. I'm just gonna read the first few pages of a short story that I had the great good fortune to be published in Epiphany. It's called This Weight, This Warmth. Daddy Sammy stands outside the circle and waits for the traffic light to turn red, the pedestrian light to flash white. When they do, he lets the college boys in front of him go first, watches them leap off the curb in their boat shoes and sandals with their blankets and lunch sacks. He follows behind, guiding the stroller toward the curb cut and keeping his eyes on the stopped cars. Beneath the stroller's teal canopy, Caleb babbles and kicks his heels against the aluminum frame as if to say, "Mush, Daddy Sammy, mush." Inside the circle, they pass through tree shade and picnic laughter, past chess players and buskers, panhandlers and protesters. The boys cut left onto the lawn, and Daddy Sammy continues toward the center, where streams of water spill from a massive marble bowl buttressed by allegorical figures of sea, wind, and stars, spotted green with summer algae. Spying an empty patch of marble on the lip of the fountain's pool, Daddy Sammy hoists the stroller up 2 short steps. He's shocked at how heavy his son has become in the past several months. He wonders how chubby is too chubby for an 18-month-old. Setting Caleb down facing the water, Daddy Sammy dips a hand into the pool and flings droplets into his son's squealing face. Immediately, fearing he's just infected his child with some fecal-borne illness that will rot off his little black nose, he scrubs Caleb's face with the hem of his shirt. On his phone, Daddy Sammy pulls up the gallery's website to make sure he has the right cross streets. He taps current shows. He taps Miguel Placenda, Undraped. He scrolls through several black and white gelatin portraits, men in suits, men in drag, men in nothing at all. He reaches for the fat marker in the leg pocket of his cargo shorts to make sure it's still there next to his keys. Daddy Sammy searches for the college boys on the surrounding green, but they're lost, so he goes back to watching Caleb's warm, wormy little body. Droplets of fountain water peck Daddy Sammy's back through his sweat-damp shirt. He adjusts the stroller to keep the sun out of Caleb's eyes. "This is where Daddy Sammy used to live," he says to Caleb, "long, long before you were born. He used to come here all the time to read. See that bookstore over there? No, over there. No, there. Anyway, that's where Daddy Sammy used to work." Indifferent to his father's history, Caleb strains for invisible fish tumbling into the marble basin. Daddy Sammy waits for Caleb to stretch his arms, then takes a photo and sends it to Daddy Brian in New Orleans. Almost immediately, as if he's been waiting in limbo instead of managing a trade show for the American Truckers Association, Daddy Brian responds with a row of fat red hearts. The commandment, "Don't move, not 1 inch," came on a blistering afternoon in July of 2001. Sammy sat along the southern curve of benches facing the fountain, on break from the bookstore where he'd started working as an excuse to avoid going back home to Ohio for 3 summer months of alpaca farm drudgery with his family. The bookstore let its employees borrow what they wanted off the shelves for 2 weeks at a time, so he'd been using his lunch hours to read the books he couldn't at home. Before Night Falls, Faggots, Junkie, Close to the Knives, A Boy's Own Story, which he just started and was holding up to his face to block out the sun. Assuming the voice was directed at someone else, Sammy ignored it. Then came a noise he couldn't ignore, the shutter of a camera. At the edge of his vision, Sammy watched a shadow shift along the concrete. Another shutter snap, another. Perplexed, Sammy sat with his book and tried to focus on the words in front of him. "You can move again." Sammy turned to see an old Leica like his father's dangling from a black strap. The man attached to it sat next to Sammy, smelling of dried sweat and clove cigarettes. He wore black sneakers, black baggy pants, a black shirt with a line of white buttons leading up to the sharp wedge of his Adam's apple. "The angle was just too good to ignore," he said. "Your arms, your legs, they're very long and slender." Sammy, still unable to harden his Ohio heart to strangers after 2 years in Washington, put down the book carefully, if the books were damaged they couldn't be sold, and gave the man his complete attention. "It's a compliment," the man said. "What I mean is they're like architecture." Sammy looked at his arms, his legs, and frowned. "They called me Captain Marfan in high school." "Why? Marfan syndrome?" The man shook his head. "It's this illness that makes your arms and legs really, really long," Sammy said. "Anyway, I don't have it or anything. Captain Marfan, that's what I'll call this photo. How about something else? Boy with book. Beautiful boy with book. Beautiful boy with book whose lunch break is almost over." The man smiled and extended a damp hand. "Miguel," he said. "Sammy." He spelled it, explaining the missing second M, the concluding I, middle fingers both to his parents' conventionality. both alterations they refused to acknowledge. Miguel sat and stretched his legs, crossed them at the ankles. A runner with shoulder blades like folded wings sprinted into the circle and stopped to stretch by the fountain. He cupped his hand under the streaming water and sprinkled it down his bare, gleaming back. Sammy watched Miguel aim the camera and take several shots. "Good day to be a photographer," Miguel said. The sun slipped behind a cloud and Sammy could see Miguel's eyes more clearly. There was something unnerving about his gaze, flattering as well. The stare of someone who knew what beauty was, not just classical beauty, haphazard beauty, everyday beauty. Sammy's own ill-proportioned limbs, the sinewy perfection of the jogger still catching his breath in front of them. Miguel's gaze, his camera, made it all oddly, equally beautiful. "Well," Sammy said, "I have to get going." "So soon?" "I'd say take a picture, it'll last longer, but I'd like to take more. My studio is right up the street." Sammy laughed. He couldn't help himself. He was used to drunken fumblings on club couches, shower stall hand jobs with closet cases. He couldn't recall ever having been propositioned so effortlessly, no less in open daylight. It was impossible to ignore the lure of being desired by a stranger. For a moment, Sammy considered it. He saw himself, as if through a computer screen, getting up and following Miguel to his studio for more photographs and everything that came after. "I really should get back," Sammy said. He stood to avoid looking as deflated as he felt. Another time, Miguel dug into the pockets of his slacks, held out a card. Miguel Placenda, male photography. A phone number, a Q Street address east of the circle. Sammy took the card. "Thanks." "Hope to see you," Miguel said. They raised their palms to one another. Then Sammy walked away, following the curve of benches north around the circle and turning up the concrete spoke that led to the bookstore. Behind the safety of other summer bodies, he caught a last look at Miguel. Narrow face angled up to the trees, camera dangling in disappointment between his legs by its long black strap. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zach, and congratulations again on the publication. I know that McNally dropped in the link of how to buy Let's Get Back to the Party. McNally is so generous and always letting us and so many other literary organizations and journals host events virtually with them. So buying a book from them means so much and allows us to, continue to support each other as literary communities and as journals and as writers. So our next reader, Naomi Siemens. Naomi Siemens is a poet and translator based in New York City. Her work can be found in Words Without Borders, The Believer, Slice Magazine, Portland Review, the American Journal of Poetry, The Scores, and American Chordata, among other publications in the US and abroad. She has read her translations at the British Library's Anglo-Saxon Kingdoms exhibition in London, was selected by the Poetry Society of New York for a residency at the iconic Mid-Manhattan branch of the New York Public Library, and was a 2019 Alta Travel Fellow. Her manuscript, The Errant, was a finalist for the X.J. Kennedy Poetry Prize. Please welcome Naomi.
Thank you. All right, can you hear me okay? All my ancestors. Cold bog pools, late wheat, reeds bend, and tea is their sex, almost Sumerian. The sleeping women in the last long fields are turning over the soil under a gray sky with their dream tops. A girl from a wandering band of what would be Mohawks died here just over 2,000 years ago since. She gave her body to her root lover, let her move her long fingers over her skin until she became stiff and brittle and ran liquid with pleasure. Now all the women after are her lovers and will praise her with gifts. With their sacred rot, their bodies will mingle in the making of new soil. With gifts, you will praise her. Bring her sweetgrass from the Maritimes, gathered after a hurricane that you braided alone and thinking, I know you, I know you. Bring her an eagle feather wrapped with a piece of red cloth, torn, not cut, since it belonged to your beautiful sister who went to the lodge with you and held your hand when you were sick, who lost her lover in a lake one night after the canoe sank and had to swim to shore in the cold dark, following the path of the full moon for miles to collapse on land, finally safe, only to get terribly sick years later and leave you with a small bottle of ash and one eagle feather. Bring her everything you've got. Bring her a photo of your firstborn from his second passport, when he was little and his hair was long and people thought he was a girl. Bring her your black wool cape and bonnet that you stitched yourself while dreaming of leaving your family and singing under your breath, I know her, I know her. Soft, so not even the horses would hear. Bring her the title page of the memoirs of the girl from Los Angeles. When she signed it, looked at you like she knew you and made you want to love her, at least for a little while. Bring her a torn t-shirt from the one who never called back. Bring her a cup of water and a warm sweater. Bring her stories and something sweet. And then when you can think of no other gift, give her your life. Do all the things. If you want to go to a place, then go there. If you want to say something to someone, say it. And the late wheat will write and say, I know you. I know you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Oh my goodness, we've already had such a wonderful, wonderful set of readers, and we still have one more. And before I introduce Roxana, I just wanted to say just one more time how excited and how proud I am of all of our contributors, all of our writers, all of our slush readers, everyone who works, our editors, everyone who works so hard to make Epiphany what it is and to contribute to our community. And I'm just in awe that somehow during COVID, we put out 2 beautiful issues, which just sort of blows my mind. And I'm just so grateful for all of you to be here tonight. Thank you so much. So our final reader tonight is Roxana Robinson. Roxana is the author of 10 books, 6 novels, 3 collections of short stories, and the biography Georgia O'Keeffe, A Life. 4 of those were chosen as New York Times notable books, 2 as New York Times editor's choices, and her fiction has appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, Harper's, Best American Short Stories, Tin House, and elsewhere. Her work has been widely anthologized and broadcast on NPR. Her books have been published in England, France, Germany, Holland, and Spain. She's the recipient of many awards, the most recent being the Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Award from Poets and Writers. Please welcome Roxana.
Thank you. It's really such a pleasure to be reading in this group. I love all the readings I've heard so far, and I love the sense of just vitality that we're part of tonight. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, McNally, Jackson, Maris. So I'm going to read from the beginning of the short story called Corvette, which I have the honor to be included in this issue of Epiphany. The road was a little slick, but not from rain. It ran alongside the river there, and at night the mist rose and drifted across, turning it slippery. It was late, and Alexa was driving her husband's car, theirs really, the only one they had, but his choice, a pale yellow Corvette, sleek and powerful, a muscle car. Malcolm liked speed. The headlights made 2 long tunnels of light on the narrow road. She was driving fast now. She had slowed down for the last town, Dorset, which was only a few buildings and a traffic light. After Dorset, there was nothing for miles, the road winding along the narrow valley between the river and the fields. On one side, she could feel the openness of the nighttime meadows, and on the other, the big dreaming trees leaning out over the river. In the headlights, the sign came up bright, a yellow diamond for danger, showing a tilting car on a zigzag road. It gave the speed limit, 15 mph. Alexa had driven along here with her husband. This was the road they took from the city where they lived to the house in the Berkshires they'd rented for August. She was staying out here full-time to paint. Malcolm was in the city during the week, coming up on weekends by train. The first time Malcolm saw the sign, he snorted. 15, he said scornfully. This car could take that turn at 45. He was contemptuous of rules. The Corvette was low and smooth and showy, made of undulating fiberglass. The headlights lay concealed beneath panels that raised like eyelids as the lights rose, silently, already bright. The hood was long and sleek, flowing over the gigantic engine, but the rear end looked as though it had been abruptly chopped off. There was no back seat and no trunk. The gas tank was just behind the driver's seat. Malcolm had told her that if the car were hit from the rear, the tank would explode and incinerate the driver. The story gave the car a sinister glamour. Malcolm liked risk. It was one reason she had married him, excitement. They had been married for 2 years. When Alexa saw the sign that night, she thought of what Malcolm had said. By then, she'd become mesmerized by the silence and darkness, the long, smooth road. Velocity held her in its grip, and she felt a kind of obligation towards speed, nerve, challenge. It was 1971, and she was 22 years old. She should be breaking rules and enjoying it. She kept her foot on the accelerator. She went into the turn, bending to the left, fast and smooth. It was all right as she went around the corner, but as she came onto the straight, things went wrong. She was steering to the right, but the car was not going to the right. She and the car were doing something else, sliding left, though they were pointed right, and then they were slipping diagonally, skidding, and she kept twisting the wheel, and everything was lit up by the headlights and by a street light which was shining down from overhead like a light in hell. Everything was vivid and illuminated. At the skid, she hit the brakes, and then things sped up very fast into warp speed, and then the landscape turned blurred and liquid. And she felt the tiny sickening lift, the shift into weightlessness that meant she was no longer connected to the surface of the earth. And she understood that it was too late to do anything. It was out of her hands. The car made a swift, dizzying swivel, and then something else happened, some impact. And the car lifted right off the earth, and then they were hurtling in a new direction, flying backwards through the air, the headlights pointing the wrong way at a different, terrifying angle. And then a loud metallic noise and a slamming thud, and then everything stopped. The sound stopped and the motion stopped. The absence of sound and motion was shocking. Alexa was sitting upright in the driver's seat. The car was at the top of a bank facing downhill. For a while, she sat without stirring. She couldn't move. The car was listing, and the big radiant beams of the headlights shone diagonally down toward the road. Steam rose in pale clouds from the hood and from the tall grass which had been crushed into a wide track by the wheels. Everything was now silent and motionless. The black road shone faintly below, and the trees beyond it were dim shadows. It was very late, and the dark summer night was all around her. It was now still, but everything seemed to be echoing with speed, silence, violence, noise. She seemed to be echoing with it. The engine had stopped. After a long time, Alexa lifted her hand and turned the key in the ignition. She thought she'd start the car and drive it back down the bank and out onto the road, away from the tire tracks, the flattened, steaming grass, away from everything. But the engine refused to start. She tried again, then again. There was no sound at all when she turned the key. She opened the door and climbed out. The car had smashed dead center backwards into a telephone pole. The rear end was stoven in. The pole was embedded in the center of the car, a foot from where Alexa's head had been, where the gas tank was. She stood in front of the wrecked and gleaming car. The night was silent, but it seemed that it was all still happening, the car rocketing around the corner, sliding into that intergalactic swivel, then leaving the surface of the earth. She stood still. The engine was still ticking, and steam rose from the hood. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxana. Thank you, all of our readers tonight. And thanks, Allison, for helping me end. And thanks to everyone for coming. It's been a really wonderful night. I'm ridiculously proud of this issue. I mean, we put it out during a pandemic. It was super delayed. We hit all kinds of snags and we still got it out, and it's still just absolutely gorgeous. I'm just speaking as the editor-in-chief of this particular issue. It's such a thrill, and I know our poetry editor, Simona, who's here tonight too, can probably attest to this. It is such an amazing experience to hear some of this stuff out loud after working on it. So what an incredible honor to be here with all of you tonight, and thanks for sharing your words with us. And thanks, Maris, for hosting. And thanks to Kelly Jackson.
Thank you.
Anyone who we didn't share links to their stories in the chat, they will be published online soon. Our aim is to publish everything in print, also online. So everything that is in print will also appear online in the coming weeks. So stay tuned on the website, and thanks again for coming tonight.